Check the description for the following discount codes. So this, as the title says, isn't quite the worst wheel I've ever tested. Speaking of the wheel, it actually detaches. So you can have a little close up of the sort of average button quality that's on there. We have a very strange D-pad arrangement. It's not a D-pad, it's individual up, down, left and right buttons. And we have a couple of metal, I think they're, yeah, they're metal, clicky pedal shifters and 2 analog ones, which is unexpected. You know, the last PXM wheel I reviewed had that huge dead zone that just made it undrivable. You couldn't get rid of it. I'm pleased to say this one doesn't have that huge dead zone. I can actually race with this. In fact, have a look at me doing a little go in Dirt Rally now. I'm doing Dirt Rally because I know the stages really well and I always H-pattern shift in Dirt Rally. So it was a good opportunity to try out the H-pattern shifter. And Dirt Rally, being an older game, doesn't support force feedback on a lot of the more modern wheels. The Acertech ones are a good example of this. You have to add in some additional text to one of the config files to get it to work. Now this PXM V99 it falls into that scenario as well. So when you see me driving here, there's no actual force feedback. There's like a fixed level of resistance through the wheel, so it's not off, but there's no force feedback as such. But I thought it's a good test just for the H-pattern shifter. And I was using the bottom left analog paddle as a handbrake, which I often do if I'm testing things and I haven't got a handbrake set up. So yeah, I was actually able to drive in Dirt Rally, which, as I mentioned before, requires continuous sort of steering inputs around that centre section. There was no dead zone, so that was great. We're off to a good start. The wheel, but in fact, yeah, the shifter, I might as well show you that as I was just using it. This is aluminium, this top here, and we have 6 gears plus a push down reverse. The push down reverse uses the same slot as 6th though, which is a little bit irritating. You've got a couple of buttons on here. They're marked high and low and park for sort of truck driving simulators, but you can map them to whatever you want. In fact, you can map any of the inputs on the steering wheel or on this to whatever you like, and the pedals as well if you really wanted to. They're just using direct input on PC. We've got a table clamp on here. There's no hard mounting option for this that I could see. I mean, you could unscrew the table clamp, but they're just screws. They're not your M6 size bolts that you would find, you know, on like a Logitech shifter to be able to bolt it to a rig or anything like that. But it feels very much like a Logitech shifter to use if you want a good comparison. So it's not bad. They've then gone the Thrustmaster route of having these circular plugs, which, you know, they kind of add to the feeling of quality to this, which it doesn't have a lot of elsewhere, so that's a bonus. The speaking of Thrustmaster, there's a quick release on the wheel here, which again looks very similar to what you would find in the Thrustmaster ecosystem. Here is the wheelbase itself, a claimed 3.2 Newton meters of torque, and I'm not going to disagree with that. I would say it does feel a little stronger than a Logitech G920, G923, G29, G27, G25, they're all the same. This, however, unlike the shifter, can be hard mounted to a rig, but I tested it using the table clamps because I think anyone that buys this will most likely be a table or bedroom racer. You know, it's not a serious wheel. So the table clamps, these are actually some of the nicest table clamps I've seen. They slide over, I mean, you'll see it in the driving footage, and you just nip up this bolt here using the provided Allen key. And what it means is you've got very low profile under the desk. It's not hitting your knees or anything like that, which I've found with some other table clamps that stick down quite far that are kind of G-clamp style. So these are actually quite nice and they feel pretty solid as well. No issues holding this wheel in place whatsoever. You've also got angle adjustment here. 4 holes of angle adjustment. In the footage you've seen me driving that you'll continue to see, I had it on the highest setting, as you could just see there. On the back of this there is a port for the shifter, a port for the pedals, a switch to flick between 900 and 270. Yeah. And then your power supply. There is an additional USB. This is your sort of pass through for the console support. This goes into the controller, I believe, as an accessory. I don't have modern consoles here to test, so I can't verify, but that's what the instructions say. The actual USB cable for this is hardwired in, which I found unusual. And there's the barrel plug for the 2 amp power supply. Yeah, everything else, the cables are modular, as you saw for the shifter a minute ago. And for the pedals, it's just an RJ12 socket in the back. There's also a USB-C. Everything can be plugged into your PC individually. May as well have a look at these very plasticky pedals. There's no feeling of quality here at all. They don't look bad, the shape, the design, but they are plasticky, and you've actually got adjustment on the faces, you know, left and right, which is something, I suppose. But yeah, the entire assembly is plastic, feels very light. They do claim Hall effect sensors in here. I haven't opened it up, so I can't tell you one way or another. We also have hard mounting captive nuts in the bottom there for bolting to a rig. So the pedals and the wheelbase, more designed to be bolted to a rig. Well, not more designed, but designed to be able to do so if you want. The angle of these pedals, again, is more upright, like you would use on a rig. The other wheel I reviewed, a week ago, was your typical sort of very low profile flat pedals, very much designed for use on carpet. You'll see some footage of me using this on carpet now. In fact, I may as well show you. They stayed in place with my chair sat down in its lowest position, typical office chair, you know, hydraulic ram type adjustment or pneumatic ram, whatever it is. Slammed my seat to the floor, and that put me in a reasonable position for both steering wheel height and for the pedals themselves. When I was actually trying dirt rally, I had the seat a bit higher up because I was reaching for the H-pattern shifter, and the pedals would tip up as I pressed the brake pedal, which has actually got a little more resistance than the accelerator or the clutch. So as you can probably tell, I haven't said don't buy this wheel yet. I think I'm probably still going to say don't buy this wheel because the price is £210 on Amazon. I think it's still too close to a Logitech setup, which still has nicer pedals, still has a nicer leather bound steering wheel with a D-pad, which is a bit more traditional. Not that it really matters in racing games. You use a D-pad for other than directions. Of course, doesn't have analog paddles, which this does. This is again rubbery, just like the previous wheel. And even though we do have a quick release wheel, I don't think there's any other options for you to buy and put on there. So will there ever be? Who knows? But the force feedback itself, when I did have it working, which is in ACC, as you'll see now, as I say, Dirt Rally's old, doesn't really support it. The force feedback was strong. As I said, I don't question the 3.2 Newton meters, but it was very unrefined. Yes, you could catch slides. Yes, you would feel rumble strips as you went over them, and you would get, you know, that loading up of the wheel as you're cornering and the unloading as you're straightening out. So the force feedback definitely works, but unrefined is definitely the way to describe it. I wouldn't even say it lacks hugely on the detail side of things compared to, say, a Logitech. You do lose some detail, you know, with a gear-driven wheel anyway. And it was responsive because I almost kind of expected a bit of a delay between like when your wheels hit a rumble strip or a curb, and then when I felt it, because I'm thinking these are going to be, you know, cheap, slow, responsive motors. But there wasn't a delay. It was actually pretty instant, I would say. Comparable to the Logitech stuff without question. So from a force feedback point of view, not a good force feedback, but it is there and it does work. Unrefined, rough around the edges is the best way to describe it. I think, and speaking of unrefined and rough around the edges, there's no software on your PC for use with this. You have to do it using an app. Now, I can't connect to the wheelbase right now because obviously it's unpowered. But even when I was able to connect to the wheelbase, which it did without issue, none of the sliders actually made any difference in the sim racing title at all. None of them, not even one. And I'd play around with the settings and then it would freeze and I'd have to come out of the app, close it down, restart it. I'd try and reset the settings back to where they came by default after moving them and finding they didn't do anything. And then that would freeze, saying resetting, and I'd have to come out, close it down, load it up again. This is on Android. So yeah, the app, when it did appear to be working, it wasn't crashing. No issues connecting to the wheelbase. Did that straight away without problems. Didn't actually do anything. So when I was tweaking the force feedback, I was doing it in-game, in ACC, for example. And, you know, whacked up to 100%. A fair bit of torque there for, you know, little gear-driven wheelbase. But as I say, unrefined, unpolished, very rough around the edges. So I think I would still, for £209, say just throw in an extra 10 to 30 quid and go and buy a Logitech G920. Certainly, you know, if it's available, that's got to be the thing to do. I don't really see an advantage to buying this. The force feedback is better on the Logitech stuff. And of course, it's universally supported across all sim racing titles and, you know, Xbox, PlayStation, everything. So in the UK at least, no real reason I can see to buy this. If it was, I don't know, if it was 100 quid for the bundle, you know, and that's it, that's all you've got, that's all the money you can afford, and there's just no hope of getting a Logitech, I mean, you could always go second hand, but let's talk new, then it does function. The force feedback does work, and like I say, you can catch slides, you do get the rumble strips, you do get the loading and unloading as you corner. So it's better than nothing if it was £100, but not at 210. Anyway, shall I put a link in the description in case you want to go check it out? Maybe you're in a country where you don't have Logitech as an option. I'll put a link in the description just in case this falls into someone's category of this is my only kind of real option, because it does work. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and as always, take it easy.